And joining us right now to talk more about it is Representative Issa. Congressman, good to have you on the program.
Well, thanks for covering this, Maria. It's certainly timely, and American lives and our future is at stake.
Absolutely. You are just back from a trip. You spent time directly with a number of leaders in Egypt as well as Jordan and Israel, of course. Can you tell us what you've learned?
Well, I think whether it's Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, or Israel, the leaders' number one concern there is ISIS, the expansion of this Sunni terrorist organization and the impact it's having on the entire region was first and foremost, with particularly in Jordan and in Israel, a recognition that the United States is reacting, but reacting too little, too slow, and that it's going to take a real surge if we're going to eliminate the threat of ISIS before it multiplies and spreads.
Well, it's pretty extraordinary when you see so many countries in the region recognizing the danger of ISIS. Let me ask you, do you see ISIS as a direct threat to the United States?
I do. I do, simply because if they solidify this nation, if you will, that's being formed in parts of Iraq and Syria, and then begin expanding from there, they'll have the base in which to launch terrorist attacks, and very clearly they have a willingness to kill and to kill in mass and not to obey any of the rules of war.
When you spoke with the president of Egypt, as well as King Abdullah in Jordan and Prime Minister Netanyahu, what did they say in terms of what they'd like the United States to do?
Well, they need a combination. They're willing to fight. They're willing to use their assets, but there are many things they need from the United States, including, obviously, the ability to spot targets and help them with it. And given that, the Arab world is willing to be in the fight in every real sense.
Let me move on to the Iron Dome, Congressman, because I know you spent time there in Israel. Of course, the U.S., a major funder of the Iron Dome. How effective is it? What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's an amazing system. It's built on many of the technologies that we developed, the Patriot and others, and it's able, with one missile, to intercept about 90% of the time a rocket fired from Gaza. They typically fire two, which gets them to the 99%. But it also does something amazing, which is it calculates when not to intercept a rocket. More than 2/3 of the time, they'll look at the trajectory and know that a rocket's going to fall harmlessly. They let it do so. So it's both frugal in not being fired when it isn't needed, and very effective when fired. It's expensive, but it saves lives. And Maria, it saves lives on both sides, because it saves lives of Israelis, but it also keeps Israel from being forced to retaliate like for like into Gaza. And in fact, in many cases, they simply intercept the rocket and do no retaliation. And that means that, as terrible as things are in Gaza, as many people have lost their lives, without Iron Dome, many more would have died.
Very interesting. Congressman, let me move on to the IRS. Of course, you issued a subpoena to get those emails many, many months ago. What are you going to do about this now, Congressman? I mean, is there any chance you can get Lois Lerner back on the stand? And what happens then? Would she plead the fifth again?
Lois Lerner is a partisan political activist who, for most of her decades of service, obviously took that bent into her work, first at the Federal Election Commission and then at the IRS. It's part of exactly what we have to root out of government, is people who put their party and their political beliefs ahead of just doing the job they're paid to do. So I don't think we're going to get much more out of Lois Lerner. She did what she did. She clearly did it deliberately. The question is, will we first of all get some changes in government agencies to prevent this in the future? And second of all, and I think the more important one, do the American people understand from our investigations how frustrating it is when this president will say he's transparent? Well, in fact, it takes court order after court order to get what little we get. And I'm going to be partisan for a moment. This is for the voters to decide in November. Do they want to have the status quo, or do they want to have a little more teeth in our ability to get discovery, to hold this administration and its bureaucracy accountable?
Well, you said that they have a pattern of only holding emails 6 months. Why? Why do you think that is?
Well, it turns out the Federal Trade Commission and others in some cases have similar. It's very good to not be accountable. Rather than a few $100s in backup cartridges in case somebody wants them, to simply say, well, we're giving you what we have, but we don't have them. It's very convenient.
So no accountability.
Very, very little. And I want to remind people, I'm concerned about this administration because they're not transparent. I'm also concerned because they're not willing to go after political activists within the government, and that's equally concerning. I want a bureaucracy that doesn't have some of these bad apples, because most people that work for the government try to keep their politics out of doing their daily job. That's part of what our committee's trying to do. Obviously, the president and his people obstructing our ability to get to the truth should be concerning to all Americans.
Absolutely.